Ladies and gentlemen,
we're about to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, George Whittam.
ISDN. How many of you have heard of ISDN? Heard the buzzword? Almost everybody. ISDN is a technology that is on this long period of becoming obsolete and dying off, except for this little niche of voiceover studios and little networks like CBS, NBC, and Fox that still insist on using it, and it's still being used by these talent because that's what their clients use, and it's just a way of sending audio between studios. And when I mean sending, I don't mean sending an MP3 by email. I mean your audio is being carried over phone lines real time. It's digital telephone lines. So it's as though you're sitting on the other side of the glass and talking to the director, but you're actually in another studio on the other side of the world. So ISDN is still being used by a small percentage of probably the top earners of the voiceover actors. And everybody else is just using your typical file sharing services, Dropbox, and some people still use FTP, which is a way to host a file so somebody else can get the file. And that's the way the majority of us are working. But the fellow in Connecticut needed the ISDN, and by some amazing loophole, we were able to get it. Because, as I was saying, it's kind of in the last throes of surviving. Verizon decided last year that May 18th, or whatever it was the last day they would allow anybody in the northeast of the US to order ISDN. They were like, put a line in the sand. And then we found a workaround, and we were able to get him ISDN in his studio. And I'm not even going to go into what that is right now, but we were able to get it. Mac versus Windows. Oh, Mac versus Windows? Okay, I'll delve into that controversial topic. If you're on any forum online, there's usually an FAQ about what you're allowed to talk about and not talk about. That's usually one of the topics that are off limits. I'll say that I was Windows for many years until about 2006, and then I got my first Mac, a little Mac Mini. I'm still using a Mac Mini. In fact, this is my actual Mac Mini that I use at home to do my show, to do everything I do. This is the actual computer. I throw it in my bag and I bring it with me. I like Mac, not because I like Apple per se, but I like Mac because I like the operating system, the way things are laid out. There's logic to it. The software that I happen to really adore, which I'm actually using at this moment to record me, is Twisted Wave, is currently only Mac, and it probably will never actually be a Windows program. He does have a web version which will run on any computer, which is pretty cool. But the bottom line is, for me, I'm supporting hundreds and hundreds of voice actors. So when they're using a Mac, I know it's this model, so I know exactly what is inside that computer. It's been vetted. It's under some sort of warranty or support, usually. I know that I can go to the website, the manufacturer that makes the audio interface, which in this particular case is a little Focusrite iTrack Solo. That's what I'm carrying around with me. I know that that's going to work with that computer. The software, again, Twisted Wave, I know that software will work with this computer. With Windows, there's just a tremendous amount of variables. And for people that are pro Windows, that's fine. And oftentimes those that are really adamant Windows users either they don't think they need my help, or they just don't need my help because they're already geeks and they understand Windows and it makes sense to them and they like customizing it and they get the whole workflow of it. But for me, Mac makes the most sense because it is overall the most reliable, and it overall has the least amount of day-to-day maintenance issues. Virus scanning and malware and all that stuff. Macs just aren't attacked by the hackers the way Windows computers are. When all the federal government and the banks go to Mac OS, then you got something to worry about. Because that's when people will start hacking away at the Mac and it'll become a target for hackers. But so far, it's not. It's a bunch of creative people and movie producers and artists and photographers and musicians using Macs. So nobody's, not to say nobody's doing it, but a very tiny percentage of the hackers that are trying to steal your identity and stuff are attacking Macs. So that for me is another good reason why I recommend it. So you can buy a used MacBook online for under $500. You know, and a new Windows computer would often start in that price range. So they're price competitive now, especially if you go used. And they maintain their value. You can sell a used Mac in 5 years and get back half of what you paid for it. A PC would be worth 1/10 of what you paid for it. So I think they're a good investment and just overall a good user experience. I know people doing really, really good work by just plugging a mic into one of these things.
What is that again?
This is a iTrack. That's what it's called, the iTrack. It's made by Focusrite. It's getting to the point, the technology of the perfection of the technology, of the circuitry inside this thing that is called the preamp, which the microphone gets the signal boosted and then it gets turned into digital and then it goes through the USB cable.
Is that the equivalent of an M box?
Yeah, exactly. That technology is getting arguably perfected. I mean, it's getting really good. And, you know, to be perfectly honest, the human voice is not the most difficult thing to record. Piano, different story. Drums, much more difficult. The human voice isn't that difficult. So we don't need the most esoteric, extremely high-end, expensive equipment to record a human voice well. And the equipment we're using nowadays, like these devices, you can pretty much plug a good condenser mic into any one of these and get good results. There's a few maybe disappointing devices out there, but overall most of them are suitable and bypassing the need for any external preamp or standalone preamp. You'll never have absolute dead quiet. If you do, it's because you've artificially created that using a thing called a gate. And there's software and hardware that will do something called gating. There's software that will do that for you so that when you stop talking, normally there'd be just an amount of hiss, sort of just residual hiss in the file. Like if I stop speaking right now, that jaggedy line, that's your room tone. Even in the quietest studios, there's always some of that. If you have none of that, that's probably because you use something called a gate. And what that does, as soon as you stop speaking, it turns down the volume artificially. So you're never going to have total silence. And frankly, most voice producers don't always want total silence. It doesn't sound natural. It sounds, especially in audiobooks. And audiobooks is sort of a unique beast, but they hate the lack of room tone. They specifically want room tone to be consistent all the way through. Because when you're listening to it back, say you're laying in bed, closed eyes, earbuds in your ears, if there's no room tone, it sounds it takes you out of it for a second. When they stop speaking and it's just total silence, it sounds very eerie and unnatural. So room tone can be important. Yeah. I mean, I've had many clients that do it out of just pure necessity. I mean, believe it or not, there's a terminology in the industry we call the golden handcuffs. And that's what happens when you're working in the world of promo or another part of the world which we call affiliates. Affiliates is when you're doing a specific television network and you have to announce what's going to be on the news that night. And they're writing the scripts that day and then saying, we need your voice on this promo, which is going to be on the air in 15, maybe 30 minutes. That stuff's really time sensitive, very high pressure. And so I have clients who are driving literally from a studio to their house and they get that call, I need this in 15 minutes. And they pull off the side of the road, find a sort of quiet niche if they can, and they often will get in the back seat because now you've got the seats in front of you creating a barrier, and rig up their setup and record in the car. Cars, especially any car that's modern, are very quiet and acoustically pretty good because they don't have any hard surfaces that are parallel. It's all curved glass and so sound tends to just dissipate very well in a car. And for some people that have nowhere to record, sometimes the car is the only place they can find. If you have a car and a garage inside if you have a garage and a car, go try it sometime. Just set your mic up, and even if you have to hold it by hand and sit in the back seat, and you'd be amazed actually how good it can actually sound. So in a pinch, cars do work. If you're choosing headphones, I will use these for an example. I will fully admit that I was given these for free by Sennheiser. But if you are choosing headphones for your studio, get over the ear like this that go around the ear, and what are called sealed back headphones, not what they call open back headphones. Even if they go around your ear, some of them are actually open so that the sound passes through. And again, the problem with that is bleed. So when you're on mic and talking, the sound of your voice is coming through the ear cup and gets picked up by the mic, and you get some bleed or echo.
What model is this?
These particular ones are the HD380 Pro. These are relatively expensive. They are relatively expensive. They're $200 headphones. You can get $100 headphones that will sound great. That'll work fine. You can get $50 headphones that will work well too. In fact, Sennheiser HD419 is very much a consumer grade headphone. It's got a much thinner cable on it, but it sounds, I'd say, 90% as good as these, and they're about 40 bucks. So you don't have to spend a whole lot. Better headphones will last and be able to handle a lot of abuse. So.